Well, everybody, it took him a month, but Ned Fulmer is finally responding to the backlash or the controversy or whatever you want to call it that his podcast episode with ex-wife Ariel Fulmer received. And boy howdy, this man knows how to piss off the internet. I'll give him that. He can't read a room for fucking shit, bro. And I also have some thoughts about him in general that I wanted to talk about. But first, we're just going to go through his statement that he made. And first thing I notice is that he posted this on his Instagram and he posted this on his personal YouTube channel. But he did not post this on the channel that the podcast was uploaded to, the Rock Bottom with Ned Fulmer channel. Not a big thing, I guess, but the first thing I did notice, because if we're addressing a situation, shouldn't we be addressing it on the channel that the podcast was uploaded to? Again, a fairly small thing, I guess, but when you add it all up into Ned as a person, I don't know. There's a lot of things that I want to say he just maybe doesn't realize he's doing, but then I also have to wonder, is he that oblivious to everything, or is he maybe intentional with the things that he does? But that doesn't matter. We're just gonna get into this video, okay?
Hello. I've heard a lot of the commentary and reactions to my podcast episode with Ariel, and I wanted to take this video to address some of them. That episode with Ariel was mostly about her story, and now in this video, I'll tell a little bit more of mine.
Okay, first mistake. Thinking anybody wants to hear your story, Ned. Gotta be real with you. You're the guy who cheated. And this is something that I think Ned and even Ariel, to an extent, as we get into this video, you will kind of see. I think that they don't necessarily realize that there's no real ability to escape this context. No matter what Ned does, no matter how much apologizing he does, no matter how much, me culpa, it was my bad, I shouldn't have cheated, blah, 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 no matter how much of that he does, this event is ingrained in internet culture, okay? This is something that people joke about. This is something people reference occasionally. You can't erase that, and you can't really put it behind you in the same way that you might have been able to do if it wasn't such a big blow up that occurred, that became such a controversial thing that people were talking about pretty much all over the internet. Even people who weren't watching the Try Guys were talking about it.
First, I know that it was a very painful and uncomfortable conversation to watch. I know for some of you, it reopened things. For us, it felt like a necessary step to be able to move forward. We knew we would always get these sort of questions in any context online, and it felt like the only way to move forward was just to face it head on.
I'm not sure that's true, and I'm not sure that this was facing it head on. I'm not sure you can face this head on. Again, I think that this is something that is just going to exist around Ned, specifically forever. Maybe he'll do something to eclipse it, but he would have to do something pretty crazy in order to get people to stop talking about Ned Fulmer, the wife guy who cheated on his wife. It's tough, but it's the truth. You're Ned Fulmer, the wife guy who cheated on his wife. There's a reason you can't recover from that. That is a key aspect here that he's kind of ignoring.
As has been reported in interviews, launching the podcast with a conversation with Ariel was Ariel's idea. She's a stakeholder in the Rock Bottom podcast and this new channel, and she wants it to be successful. So that was part of the reason why, in terms of having that conversation, we did it together rather than on any other platform. We knew it would draw a lot of attention, and I know that some of you have only seen 15-second clips of me putting my foot in my mouth, but I hope for those that watched the full hour that you took something away from it. Any clip that you see on TikTok is just one small snippet of an hour-long conversation of 3 years of trying to work through this.
I do believe him when he says that it was Ariel's idea because it lines up with what I have read in articles and stuff since the podcast came out. So I do believe him. And I understand why she would want to do this. They are co parenting, and I imagine that this was a financial decision that she made for her family. And I'm not necessarily judging them for that even. I don't have judgment for them necessarily doing a podcast and trying to make money for their family. In this economy, sure, go for it. In my opinion, and this is just me, I would have just given Ariel her own podcast and said, fuck it. Ned can work behind the scenes doing whatever. Ariel will be the podcast. We'll go from there. Because the problem with Ned is that he has to rebuild not just trust with his wife, with his ex-wife now, but he broke trust with the audience. Because again, he was Ned Fulmer, the wife guy. And then he cheated on his wife. That is a very specific betrayal that he has done to the audience, for lack of a better word. They are no longer going to trust you, Ned. Not just when it comes to, I don't know, maybe sponsorships or things that you want to fucking push, but when it comes to just you being genuine with your audience, how are they going to believe that you are being genuine with them? You have lied to them once. It's sad because I do think people should not be held to their weakest moment, to their worst moment. But short of demonstrating that you have grown and changed, you're just going to have to live with the fact that there are people who do not like you anymore, who do not fuck with you. And I'm not entirely sure that he has gotten to that point, that he has accepted that.
After Discovery, I started an intensive program of therapy, group therapy, and work to really try to understand what I had done, why I had done it, and what it meant for my relationship and my life. This involved a lot of facing rationalizations, denials, minimizations, all of these mental clouds that help you continue behavior that you know is hurtful and you still do it anyways. So it let me face the truth and acknowledge in no uncertain terms that I cheated on my wife with an employee of my business, and it caused her immense pain and shattered our marriage, and also caused a lot of pain to a lot of other people. Those were my selfish actions and my choices.
I don't know if it's just me, but there's this thing that I feel like Ned does, and maybe it's him attempting to humble himself, but it really comes off as someone who is trying to minimize or diminish themselves in an attempt to gain pity, if that makes sense. I'm not saying that he's necessarily doing it intentionally, if that is what he's doing. Perhaps I just have a very cynical view of him. And to be fair, I would say that he is maybe trying to humble himself. He is trying to come off as remorseful, but it does come off more so like somebody who wants you to pity him. And obviously, he is not someone who is necessarily deserving of pity in this situation.
From there, I sought to understand the patterns of behavior that led to this. I did work with internal family systems and parts work, started in the 12-step program, and continued to understand why I had done what I did, what the underlying issues were, and what it was that I was running from when I chose to do that selfish and self-destructive behavior. In terms of my relationship with Ariel, it started as a therapeutic separation, and then from there I prepared a disclosure document that answered all of her questions and volunteered for a lie detector test to then, in a therapeutic setting, convey that information to her so that we could build something new on the same page of knowing exactly everything that happened. And this is a well-known therapeutic technique for people trying to recover from betrayal trauma. And speaking of betrayal trauma, that is a phrase that I learned. The idea of betrayal trauma and integrity abuse. So those were things that I learned about and continue to practice on a daily basis when it comes to saying what I mean and doing what I say. And when I make a mistake, immediately correcting it to stay in with, like, keep my sense of integrity intact. Additionally, I practice empathy and listening and boundaries with Ariel and others, which, you know, is sort of part of what was damaged about my brain.
God, can you imagine if every single man who cheated on his wife did a 12-step program? Can you imagine? Can you fucking imagine the world we would live in if every single man who cheated on his wife was going to therapy and doing like 12-step programs to fix their marriages? Jesus Christ. Oh my God. I'm not even saying like don't go to therapy. I want men to go to therapy. I want men to go to therapy. I just want them to go to therapy before they cheat on their wives, okay? Okay, hot take. I think that maybe they should have done this differently. I know, shocker. What I mean by that is, I think Ned should have done this first. This should have been the first episode of the podcast. It should have been just him. It should have been just him talking to the camera, talking about all of his therapy and stuff, although he is throwing around these therapy terms. Aside from that, I think that this should have been the first episode, and then you could have done an episode with Ariel talking about how she feels and everything. If they truly want to rehabilitate Ned and rebuild his career, I think that after 3 years, the first time we saw him again in this capacity should not have been talking to Ariel. I think it should have been this. It should have been him explaining how the last 3 years have gone, specifically what work he has been doing to grow. If his intention is truly to get back into these sort of public good graces, I think that that should have been the play here. And then we need time to see that change. We need time to see that growth play out. And that's going to be very hard to prove to an audience who is not, you know, intimately involved with you. It's going to be hard to prove that you have changed on that level. But until you can, it's going to be very hard to rebuild a sort of trust with the audience. He's obviously going to have whatever hardcore fans stick around, but as for the wider audience, I just don't see him getting them back unless he can really show that he has changed, that he has done work to grow. And I think that doing the podcast with Ariel, he came off really bad. It didn't come off as someone who had spent 3 years working on himself. It came off as someone who was trying to put on an image, who was trying to put on a performance for the audience. It did not seem genuine. I think that is Ned's biggest problem. I don't know if he had this issue before, but now he has a problem appearing genuine. He has a problem appearing as someone that can be trusted, not just by Ariel, but by the audience. It's kind of like Kash Patel, where if you look at him, he just always looks like he's got a secret or he's got something that he's hiding. Ned kind of has the same vibe where he just never feels genuine. He never feels like he's telling the truth. It always seems like he's putting on some sort of performance. I don't know if that's him trying to appear remorseful and humble, and maybe he's just leaning into it a little too hard. I assume he does actually feel remorseful and humble. I'm not saying that he doesn't. But it's just the way he comes off. It comes off as not very genuine, as somebody who is trying to manipulate you in some ways, for lack of a better word.
So this was a long process that it took, approximately 2 years, and continues work even to this day at the 3-year mark, even though we decided to separate officially 2 years in. It's something that I'm really proud of. That's really changed my life, and I understand that if you, a viewer, is watching this for the first time, or just sees this 15-second clip on TikTok, you don't understand everything that has led us to this point. And I know that it'll take time. And if you want to just judge me off of one clip of me talking about society, which obviously was not the best response to that situation. You are welcome to do that. I know that people have a choice when it comes to what they watch and what they consume. And if people don't want to continue engaging with me on the internet, then that's a consequence of my actions and something that I have accepted.
I wish he'd stop saying that. He keeps saying, oh, if you saw a 15-second clip on TikTok, then you're not gonna get it. Dude, I watched the whole fucking hour-long podcast, okay? I watched the whole thing, start to finish. It was still very awkward, very cringy, and you came off as very much like someone who, yes, was putting his foot in his mouth. But not because I saw a clip that made you look like you were putting your foot in your mouth. It's because you were putting your foot in your mouth. Okay, so long story short, translation. He wants to revitalize his career. He wants to resurrect what he had. And he has to get over the fact that people view him as Ned Fulmer, the try guy who cheated on his wife. Like, that's it. That's what happened here. The response to the backlash is basically just, we want to make money and we want you to watch Ned's podcast. Problem is, a lot of people don't want to watch Ned's podcast because, like I said, Ned broke trust with a lot of the audience, with a lot of the people online who liked him. And it's small in comparison to the obvious break of trust that he did with his wife, but it plays a part. It absolutely plays a part in the way people engage with him going forward. They don't view him as genuine or trustworthy. We can take a look at some of these comments here. I practice listening and empathy, CEO of Bare Minimum. Also that as well. The way he talks about cheating on his wife, it's just so... It's almost too therapy speech, if that makes sense. It's so therapy speech loaded that, again, he comes off as not very genuine. I want to hear Ned genuinely speak from his heart about what he feels about everything that happened. Right now, it just comes off as playing the part of the remorseful, humble husband who cheated on his wife and is now trying to not only get back into her good graces, but into the good graces of the public with whom his career basically rests upon. Another comment, and somebody who felt very similar, I think, to me. I watched the full hour and you took zero accountability during the entire duration of the podcast. I'm sorry to hear Ariel is a stakeholder in your rock bottom podcast. It honestly does not surprise me that Ariel is a stakeholder in the podcast. It did come off during the podcast like they were financially linked still. So I did just kind of assume that whatever money Ned was going to be making from this podcast would be going towards him and his family. And since they are co-parenting together and living a co-parenting lifestyle, I did assume that she would be making some sort of money from that podcast overall. Her being a stakeholder is a whole other aspect on top of that. But that comment does kind of sum up what I feel, which is that I watched the whole podcast and you still came off kind of like a jackass. I love these comments, dude. Oh my god, this is a big one too. Ned, I genuinely don't say this to be malicious or to drive you off the internet. At the end of the day, you can try to do whatever you want. And as you said, people will either be willing to receive it or they won't. I do believe that people deserve the chance to be able to grow and learn. That being said, I do genuinely have this question. Where do you see this going? I don't say this to be mean, but engagement has been sporadic, and a lot of it has been people criticizing the content that you're making. This person is literally saying, dude, what career do you even have? What career prospects do you even have, bro? That's so funny. That's so funny. And this person is right. They end it with, people have admittedly come back from probably worse things, but not usually without maintaining some level of controversy as a figure. That is key. People come back from worse things, of course, but those people are usually people who are already kind of awful. They are people who have an audience that is used to them being kind of shitty. For example, Nicki Minaj can do all of her crazy shit because the Barbs fuck with her that hard. Ned Fulmer doesn't have a group of barbs ready to ride at dawn for him. This person also said, I think a lot of people would rather you just be open about it. I think that honestly, if they just moved on from this, if they just focused more on making new content, making what they want to make, they would not have this issue. They would not have so many people talking about the affair. You would just have people coming in for the content. And of course, people are going to mention the affair every now and again, but that is just the internet. The way he talks, his cadence, his empty stare, the odd gaps in his speech, it all makes me deeply uncomfortable. He's like a shell of a human being, and it's disturbing. I don't know if we need to read that much into it, but I definitely get what they're saying. I understand what they're saying. Like I said, Ned comes off as very disingenuous. The persona he's putting forward just doesn't feel real. It feels like he's putting on an act. And I don't know that he necessarily is. Some people just seem that way. They just have that cadence, they just have that vibe about them, and they may be perfectly fine people, perfectly great people, nothing wrong with them, but they just happen to have a sort of cadence or vibe about them that makes them come off as less genuine. And it sucks because they could be a very genuine person. I don't know for Ned what the case is. I don't know if it's that he just comes off that way or if he is that disingenuous. I kind of have to lean towards him being disingenuous just given the fact that he did put forward a sort of wife guy persona just to turn around and cheat on his wife. Which again is, I believe, the crux of the issue here and something that he doesn't know how to fix, and I don't know if he can fix. He broke the trust of his audience, and he now has to regain trust in the public sphere, and that's not an easy thing to do. People have come back from worse, but not people who have built their image on being the wife guy. When you build your image and build your sort of persona around something, and you come off as being known for something, when you do something to contradict that, that becomes what you are known for. Just let it go, man. Your YouTube days are over. Genuine question. Do you need to be on camera? You have plenty of valuable content creation skills that would earn you a decent living working behind the scenes. Why can't you just work for someone else? Why do you need to be the center of attention? Because it's clearly not working. Honestly, a lot of these people don't even seem to be wishing necessarily, like, bad on him. They're just all, like, reading the room. They're reading the writing on the wall, which he seems unable to do. They're all like, hey man, maybe you should just log off. Yeah, I don't know. The whole thing is just a little weird, and I don't think that this is necessarily going to be an easy thing for him to come back from. It's not impossible. I do think that if he was able to present himself in a more genuine fashion, maybe that means just talking to the camera a little bit about things without all the therapy speak. I am going to end this video here. This was a lot for a 9-minute video, but I did want to just talk about Ned Fulmer a little bit and his response because it's interesting to me. It is very interesting to me, and I will be keeping an eye on this situation for a little bit just to see like what happens with him. If he does somehow manage to revitalize his career, that would be fascinating, but I don't really think that's going to happen. It's certainly never going to be to the level that it was before. But we'll see what he can make of it. And in the meantime, we'll just laugh at these awkward videos he puts out because he can't help himself. That's all I have though, so if you liked this video, please do me a favor and give it a like for me. Leave a comment, let me know what you think. Do you think I'm being too hard on Ned? Maybe I'm being too hard on him. I think I'm just being honest. Let me know what you think, and hit that subscribe button for me because I am trying to hit 200 subscribers by the end of November, and I'm gonna be real with you, it's not looking good. So if you want to help me change those odds, hit that button for me, please and thank you. Check out my other videos, check out the other video I did on Ned Fulmer. That's all I have for you, so thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourself. Free Palestine, free Sudan, and goodbye.